The storm had rolled in before dawn, swallowing the small mountain town in a white, merciless silence. Snow hammered roofs, buried doorsteps, and swept across the roads in icy waves. But inside a dimly lit garage at the edge of town, a man in a heavy faded jacket knelt beside a small, brightly colored toy truck, his breath fogging the cold air as he tightened the last screw. His name was Rowan Harker, a mechanic whose hands were roughened by years of fixing things for people who couldn't afford help. He didn't know yet that the decision he was about to make, the choice to push through the storm for the sake of a child, would change his life in ways he couldn't imagine. He just knew a little girl was waiting. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us of the good still left in this world, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Echoes of Kindness. Your support helps us spread more stories that matter. The idea of disappointing a child had always bothered Rowan more than a broken axle or a blown transmission ever could. The toy truck belonged to a girl named Nora, a quiet 7-year-old whose mother had brought it in yesterday afternoon. The mother, a tall, confident woman named Maren Calder, had apologized for rushing in so late, but she'd been traveling and only had a short window. Her daughter had begged her for weeks to fix the truck, her last gift from her father before he passed the previous winter. When Rowan heard that, he didn't accept payment, waving her off with an easy smile. Some things weren't about money. But now, with the storm growing harsher by the hour, Rowan wasn't sure if he could reach their home. The Calder house sat deeper in the hills, past where the snowplows usually stopped. Still, Rowan couldn't shake the image of a little girl waiting by a window, clutching hope in her hands. So he zipped his jacket, loaded the toy into his beat-up truck, and eased the vehicle into the blizzard. The drive was slow, each turn demanding focus as the tires crunched through growing drifts. Branches bent under the weight of the snow. Wind screamed across the open patches of road. Yet Rowan kept going, gripping the wheel like a lifeline. He wasn't anyone important, just a small-town mechanic who fixed what he could in a world that sometimes broke more than it healed. But he'd made a promise, and promises mattered. He thought about that as the truck rattled up the final hill. Promises. He used to break them. Used to disappoint people. There had been a time, years ago, when Rowan wasn't someone townsfolk trusted with their cars, let alone their children's toys. He'd been angry then, at life, at loss, at the father who left, at the mother who worked herself sick. He'd hung with the wrong crowd, scraped by making reckless decisions that stained his reputation. It took hitting rock bottom, waking up one morning with nothing but guilt and an empty wallet, to realize he had to rebuild. He'd been rebuilding ever since. The Calder house appeared through the swirling white, tall, elegant, and warm-lit even against the storm. Rowan exhaled in relief. When he parked and climbed out, snow instantly attacked his face. Still, he held the small toy to his chest, shielding it like something sacred. He knocked. The door swung open, and there stood Maren, her expression shocked to see anyone brave the storm. She looked different than yesterday, less composed, almost anxious, as if she'd been pacing. "You drove through this?" she asked, stepping aside as the wind blasted in. Rowan shrugged. Didn't want Nora waiting. Figured she'd want this back. He held out the toy truck. Maren took it slowly, her fingers trembling around the worn paint and scratched wheels. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then her eyes softened, heavy with something more than gratitude. "You have no idea what this means," she whispered. Inside, the warmth hit him instantly. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine. And then he heard it, a small, hopeful gasp. Nora peeked from behind the staircase, eyes wide, cheeks rosy. When she spotted the toy truck, she ran to her mother, gripping it fiercely, as though afraid it might disappear again. Rowan felt something shift inside his chest, a quiet ache, soft but deep. It reminded him of moments he once had, fleeting childhood memories before life became complicated. Memories of when everything he held felt safe. Maren knelt beside her daughter, brushing snow from the truck. "Say thank you, sweetheart." Nora looked up shyly, offering a small, heartfelt nod. "Thank you. I missed it." Rowan smiled and tipped his head. "Glad it's home." But even as he turned to leave, Maren spoke again. "You can't go back out there. The storm's getting worse. Stay until it settles. He hesitated, but the wind howled outside like a warning. With a quiet nod, he accepted. Hours passed as the storm raged on. Rowan sat near the fireplace, warming his frozen hands. Nora played at his feet, rolling the toy truck through imaginary landscapes. Every so often, she glanced up at him with a soft smile, trusting, grateful. Marin watched them from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed not in judgment but in thought. When she finally joined him, her expression held something complex, curiosity mixed with familiarity. "You're well known in town," she said quietly. "People say you help everyone." "Just doing what I can," Rowan replied. "But they also say, you weren't always that way." Rowan stiffened. He didn't hide his past, it followed him like a shadow, but hearing it spoken aloud still stung. "No," he admitted. "I messed up a lot of things. Tried to make up for them since." Marin nodded slowly, her gaze drifting to her daughter. "People who rebuild themselves. I respect that." Their conversation was gentle, unforced. Something unspoken formed between them, a mutual understanding carved from survival, loss, and the desire to protect the ones who mattered. When the snow began to ease later that afternoon, Rowan prepared to leave. But before he could thank Marin for the shelter, she asked him something that caught him off guard. "Do you know who I am?" Rowan blinked, confused. Marin called her. A faint, almost amused smile touched her lips. "Yes. But officially. I'm the new CEO of Corwell Industries." Rowan nearly dropped his gloves. Corwell Industries, one of the largest manufacturing companies in the region, owned the facility that employed half the town. The former CEO had retired suddenly after health issues. Everyone wondered who would replace him. Rowan hadn't imagined the elegant, warm-spoken woman now standing in her living room was the one taking the helm of such a powerhouse company. "I didn't expect," he began, but words trailed off. Marin stepped closer, gratitude softening her expression. "You didn't treat me differently yesterday. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't hesitate to fix my daughter's toy. And today, you risked your safety to bring it back. I've met people who make promises because of titles. But you kept one for a child you barely knew." Rowan felt heat rise in his cheeks. "It wasn't a big deal." "It was to us," Marin insisted. Nora ran up then, tugging at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy? Can he stay for Coco?" Rowan couldn't help the laugh that escaped him. It had been a long time since someone so small made him feel so welcomed. Marin gave him an inviting tilt of her head. "If you're not in a rush." He stayed. They talked. They laughed. Nora fell asleep curled up on the rug beside her toy truck. And for the first time in years, Rowan felt something he had long believed unreachable, belonging.